Green Report here was 6 environmental news stories you may have missed in November 2021. Let's dive in. Number 1, COP26 in Scotland. The COP26 climate conference happened early in November, and the results were pretty mixed, with most having negative reviews and some even saying that the whole thing was a failure to adequately address the severity of the climate crisis. For starters, President Joe Biden made an appearance warning that, quote, the climate crisis poses the essential threat to human existence as we know it, and urged other world leaders to embark upon a transformational shift to clean energy. But climate activists, many of whom gathered outside the Glasgow venue that hosted more than 120 world leaders, argued that Biden is failing to live up to his own words. Also, renowned Sir David Attenborough has called on leaders at the COP26 summit in Glasgow to be, quote, motivated by hope rather than fear to avoid climate catastrophe. Speaking in front of an audience that included the U.S. President Joe Biden at the conference's opening ceremony, the broadcaster and naturalist said humanity was already in trouble. He also appealed to the political leaders and heads of state gathered for the 2-week summit to commit to holding global average temperatures to 1.5 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels, the lower of the two limits set out in the 2015 Paris Climate Agreement. Attenborough said, quote, everything we have achieved in the last 10,000 years has been enabled because of the climate stability during this time. But there is good news, if you want to call it that. In the first major deal to come out of the COP26 climate talks, more than 100 countries have pledged to halt and reverse deforestation by 2030. The countries agreeing to the Glasgow leaders' declaration on forest and land use include nations with important forest covers like Brazil, Russia, Canada, Indonesia, and the Democratic Republic of the Congo, as well as many emitters like the United States and China. But in reality, there always seems to be a lag effect in these pledges, as the urgency of the situation is not met and is always some far off year like 2030, 2040, or in India's case, 2070. Number 2, Northwest Pacific regional flooding. In mid-November, quote, thousands of farm animals have died and many more are trapped by floods in desperate need of food and water after a Pacific Northwest storm battered a major hub of Canadian agriculture. Torrential rains drenched Western Canada's British Columbia and Washington State in the United States, dumping a month's worth of rain in 2 days in some areas, causing floods and mudslides that swallowed stretches of highways and forced the evacuation of thousands of people. One person has been killed and several have been reported missing. Aerial footage showed several barns engulfed by floodwaters. Farmers and residents have been frantically scrambling to save their animals from rising waters, resorting to motorboats and jet skis to tow partly submerged cows one by one to higher ground. The powerful storm comes less than 6 months after British Columbia was overwhelmed by record high temperatures that killed more than 500 people and led to wildfires that gutted an entire town. The region went through a deadly heat dome over the summer, and now they are basically dealing with more extreme conditions, but this time with precipitation. And to add more insult to injury, 2 atmospheric rivers hit the Pacific Northwest over the Thanksgiving holiday, as some areas have been drenched by more than 2 feet of rain in the last 30 days. Less than 2 weeks ago, the beginning of November, as many as 8,000 people were cut off by flooding in southern British Columbia. Number 3, wildfires in the Eastern Rockies. Wildfires are burning in the western United States, specifically in Montana, Wyoming, and Colorado. Quote, in Montana, communities in and around Absaroka were evacuated as hurricane-force winds fueled a blaze that burned as much as 5,000 acres. A grass fire in Clark, Wyoming also burned 300 acres, including multiple structures, and killed at least 1 person. The Kruger Rock Fire is forcing evacuations in Estes Park, Colorado, near Rocky Mountain National Park. So far, the fire has incinerated 133 acres and was just 15% contained as strong winds created dangerous conditions, and a firefighting plane crashed on Tuesday, November 16th, killing the pilot. Number 4, the Atacama Desert, fast fashion pollution. Deep in the Atacama Desert of Chile, new dunes are forming, not of sand, but of last year's unsold clothing from around the world. Quote, piled high on top of the previous year's fast fashion casualties and unpurchased lines of clothes, the garments are usually filled with toxins and dyes that do not biodegrade. The result, a fast fashion faux pas, an environmental disaster that's been largely overlooked. Unfortunately, clothing may take hundreds of years to biodegrade, if at all. Municipal landfills will not accept the textiles because of the chemical products contained within them. Therefore, eventually up to 39,000 tons of unsold and unwanted clothes get trucked to the driest desert in the world each year, where they literally blanket the dunes in layers and layers of discarded textiles. Number 5, new study. 29,000 tons of COVID-19 plastic waste is in the oceans. Quote, the COVID-19 pandemic has led to an increased demand for single-use plastics that intensifies pressure on an already out-of-control global plastic waste problem. The released plastics can be transported over long distances in the ocean, encounter marine wildlife, and potentially lead to injury or even death. The joint Nanjing University and University of California, San Diego-led research team looked at waste generated between the beginning of the pandemic in 2020 and August 2021. The study found that 193 countries have generated more than 8.4 million tons of COVID-specific plastic waste since the pandemic began, and 25,000 tons of that ended up in the world's oceans. The study said that, quote, the answer is that within 3 to 4 years, a large portion of the pollution will end up either on beaches or the seabed, with a smaller amount reaching the open ocean, where it could end up in gyres or a plastic accumulation zone in the Arctic Ocean. Number 6, deforestation in Brazilian Amazon update. Quote, deforestation in the Brazilian Amazon is at its highest level in 15 years. The latest data from Brazil's space agency, INPE, has discovered. This news cast doubt on Brazil's credibility after it signed a pledge to end deforestation by 2030 at this month's COP26 climate conference, which it further promised to meet by 2028. The latest satellite data from the INPE shows that 5,110 square miles of forest were lost between August 2020 and July 2021, up 22% from the year before and its highest since 2006. The area lost is almost 17 times the size of New York City. And all of this news comes on, again, the backside of COP26 with record deforestation of the Brazilian Amazon, as it can be attributed to the far-right President Jair Bolsonaro when he was in office starting in 2018 with the pledge to open more of the Amazon rainforest to development. Since then, deforestation has increased as forest has been cleared for agriculture as well as mining. That's it, and thank you for watching this recap of November 2021 environmental news stories. Please like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video, as I hope to do more environmental videos in the near future. Until then, see you soon for the next recap.